Okay, Kate, thank you so much for coming and joining us today. I'm so excited you're going to share your birth story with us. Thank you for being gracious. And just a few questions I wanted to ask you at the beginning of your story. What was your age at the time you gave birth?
I was 28.
Okay. And then, what kind of birth were you planning to have? Hospital, birth center, home?
Hospital.
Did you have a birth plan in place?
I did.
What kind of care providers did you utilize?
It was a combination of midwife. It was like several midwives in the practice and then several OBGYNs. And then you kind of rotate who you saw each visit. And then during the night of birth, there would always be a midwife and an OBGYN on call so that you could pick which one you wanted. And I had planned to use a midwife out of that practice.
Did you have a doula at all?
I did not.
So, if you could speak a little bit about how you found out you were pregnant, how the pregnancy went, was it planned, unplanned, or kind of just, on a whim?
Well, that's a story. Me and my husband, leading up to this, had been working with a nonprofit ministry out in California, and actually, after being there a few months, they ran out of money. We didn't know they were in bad financial shape, and kind of led to the loss of our housing that was through them, the loss of the jobs that were through them. We got temporary jobs living out in California and had just moved back to Georgia following that. So we didn't have permanent housing. We were staying in a sublet apartment and didn't have permanent jobs. We were working temporary jobs. About a month after we got back, we found out we were pregnant. So it was pretty unplanned. And then, the pregnancy following that, we were super excited, but also it was pretty stressful.
Okay. What kind of pregnancy did you have? Was it easy, okay, or difficult?
The pregnancy itself was pretty easy. I mean, I had various symptoms. I mean, I had probably second trimester I would get lightheaded. First trimester I had some nausea, a lot of fatigue, and then I've got some blood sugar issues, and so my blood sugar will get low, hypoglycemia, and so probably starting about second trimester, I had to pretty much around the clock, other than when I was asleep, eat every 2 hours. So honestly, eating was one of the hardest parts of it, is just to constantly be eating. I struggled keeping weight on just because of the high blood sugar stuff, and because of the nausea, and because I've got limitations in what I can eat. But other than that, I was really blessed, and I didn't have any really dangerous complications, any really big things. This season of the pregnancy itself was pretty stressful, just because we knew baby was on the way, and we weren't sure what we were doing career-wise, jobs. We were working temporary jobs at the time.
Okay, can you please share in detail about the day you went into labor and gave birth?
So I was 40 weeks plus 4 days, so I was 4 days overdue. And leading up to that had been, just trying some of the funny things to try to get things going. The walking, the pineapple, nothing too crazy. So
What's the pineapple?
So supposedly, if you eat a whole lot of pineapple, the bromamine in the pineapple can help ripen your cervix to, maybe it's dilate you more. Basically, it helps get things going without, trying to do castor oil or some more extreme measures I wasn't ready for. So I did that, and then there was like basil and I forget some other herbs like that supposedly there's some Italian dish that has a lot of that in it that's supposed to help get things going. So I've been trying a few of those things leading up to it. Sex, pineapple, walking, all the good stuff. And that morning, I'd been having a lot of Braxton Hicks all of that week. So that morning I had been having a little bit of Braxton Hicks. Didn't think much of it because it was less strong than probably it even had been a couple nights before. And I'd gone out to lunch with my family and was thinking, okay, well, nothing's happened so far, so maybe not today. I did have something that had I think it was a lot of basil or something in it for lunch. Who knows that was related. I was already 4 days over. That night, I was at home. At the time, I was living at my parents' house because we were figuring out permanent housing at the time and permanent jobs and all that. And started to kind of think, well, maybe this is more than Braxton Hicks. You know, things were still going. It was starting to pick up. It was probably at that point they're about 10 minutes apart, but at least it was starting to be a consistent amount apart. And I remember, I don't know, probably around 5 o'clock thinking, oh, maybe this is it. This is getting to be regular. We'll see. So I went for a walk around the neighborhood and just stayed up late, started hurting a little bit more. I remember my husband went to bed at one point. I told him, okay, well, I'll wake you up if it turns into anything. And it went from about 5 o'clock until midnight. I was at home, and contractions gradually picked up until they got to be about 4 or 5 minutes apart by midnight. Around 11 or so, I decided, well, maybe I should start calling my midwife. She told me about when they're about 5 minutes apart, 4 minutes apart, go ahead and check in with her. So I was on the phone in the den with it ringing, waiting for someone to answer. The nurse was going to get her. And as I'm on the phone waiting for her to answer, I get this real strong contraction. So I'm bent over double on this little ottoman thing I've got, grunting through my contraction while I'm waiting for the midwife to get on, hoping that she doesn't get on when I'm in the middle of contraction, because it's real hard to talk while you're contracting. And as I'm doing that, all of a sudden, I feel this huge gush, and my water had broken. I remember jumping up in the middle of the contraction and rushing to the bathroom, and, you're trying to, take care of business and keep it from getting all over the floor and get rid of the wet clothes that are now all over you. And I think I don't know, maybe at some point I yelled for my mom or something to give me a towel or whatever. I do remember noticing that when my water broke, the contraction stopped, so that was kind of nice. All of a sudden, there was instant relief from the contraction. The midwife gets on the phone, and I'm talking to her, and I'm telling her, well, I was gonna call you and ask if I should come in, but actually, my water just broke, so I guess I'm coming in. So I got off the phone with her, took care of business, and then, my mom brought me all my towels, so I was stuffing it in your pants to keep everything from leaking out, and trying to get some new pants and trying to get ready to go to the hospital. And I think I asked my mom, would you go wake up my husband, and go tell him what's going on. He comes downstairs, and his question is, well, do I have time to get in the shower? I'm like, I mean, if you had asked me that 10 minutes ago, maybe a quick one, but my water just broke, so we should probably get there. Maybe go grab the bags and, I don't even remember what I told him. Probably you can maybe grab a snack or who knows what, but maybe not the shower, because we were a good 45 minutes from the hospital I was supposed to give birth at. So you never know how fast it's gonna go. So after probably a good 30 minutes of us gathering things and getting ready, it took a bit. We were loaded up in the car. I'm in the front seat, trying to recline it and get in a somewhat comfortable position for the 45-minute drive to the hospital. Being upright in the car while you're contracting is not the most comfortable, so you're just kind of hanging on the dashboard and trying to breathe through them and just get your bearings. I remember we were excited, though. I remember it was funny, and we were excited, and then, then your contraction hits, and you kind of just hang on to something and pause what you were saying. You get through the next one, and then you go back to whatever it was. Remember Cosby drove a little bit fast, kind of clutching the steering wheel. He was mostly excited, though. We get there, and since it was late, by the time we got there, goodness, it was probably somewhere between 12 and 2 a.m. So the main entrance door was closed, and we had been kind of told the deal, if it was going to be closed, you should go to this other one instead. So we're trying to follow all those instructions, and I don't even remember how we ended up inside. I remember we tried a couple things first before we could get inside. Eventually some security guard came and let us in while we were wandering around at the doors knocking, and passed through. We had to pass the OR and all of these hallways and all these things until we finally got up into the labor and delivery area. and went to the receptionist with the ladies up there and, telling them, okay, I'm having a baby. They sit you in this little office where you have to fill out paperwork. At this point, my contractions are pretty close together. Like, I'm probably getting them every couple of minutes at this point. So you're trying to fill out paperwork, and you're getting contractions every 2 minutes, and they're asking you, like, detailed questions and doing all this stuff. I remember that part being hard and wishing that was over, because it is hard to sit in a chair and be coherent and be contracting at the same time. And that took a bit. That took probably like 30 minutes to get all that done. And next they moved me into this, I guess it's like this evaluation, like we're going to decide how far along you are before we go to the trouble to get you a room. So they moved me in there. They checked me inside to see how dilated in the face and all that I was. After a bit, it took them a little bit to get in there. So I'm kind of just, I don't remember if I had to lay on the table. I think they maybe let me sit on the side of it and lean over the edge and contract some until they actually got ready to check me. And they were pretty good about checking me. I don't feel like it really hurt when they checked me, but at the same time, they were, at the same time, I'm just in the middle of contracting, so it's all kind of a blur.
Do you remember how many centimeters you were when they finally did get an opportunity to check you?
Yes, I didn't find out right then, but eventually when we got into the room, they let me know that I think I was 70% effaced and, gosh, probably a 7. No, I think I was a 5 when they first checked me at that point. And at that point, they moved me into the room, the labor and delivery room I was going to be in. And I had a nurse there, and I had asked ahead of time with my birth plan. I wanted to be monitored electronically. I didn't want to have to lay in a bed and be like strapped to this thing that was, monitoring how the baby was doing the whole time. Because I was planning on potentially getting pain meds, getting an epidural, but I wanted to wait basically as long as possible because I was worried it would slow things down. So, if you're not going to get pain meds for a while, I didn't want to be on my back. So I had a nurse who, for whatever reason, didn't get the little portable one out. So I had to be laying on my back for a bit while she was checking me. And she's like, well, it's not going to be very, very long. We're just going to do this real quick, and then I'll get the other one set up for you. You can get up and all that. So she did that. And, again, went through a bunch of paperwork kind of questions, sitting there while I'm on my back contracting. And I was getting mad. Because I'm like, probably between the time when she set me on my back and they told me I was in there until that nurse left, which she ended up leaving about an hour later when they checked me again. I ended up at a 7, probably by the 7 dilated by the time I was getting off of, but she was letting me get off of that bed. So, I'm getting close to transition, so I'm on that bed and I'm getting more and more angry. And I'm not someone who gets angry super easy. But it gets to one point where, I'm kind of asking nicely a couple times, and she's like, just a little bit longer. It's been like probably 45 minutes like that. Finally, I just ignored her. I got up. And I sat on the side of the bed, and I started doing my thing. So I was like, no, you don't. This, we haven't had any complications. You've monitored enough. We're good. I'm getting up. I didn't say all that. I just did it. Is what I'm thinking. And I had what I think was back labor. So I didn't get a huge break in between each contraction. It would lighten up, but it would be like the real strong contraction, then it would lighten up, but it would still continue to hurt some. And by some, like, some was still a good bit. So once I was at the edge of the bed, I had my husband, we had talked about this before just from watching some birth coach kind of videos things about doing the counter pressure on my back. So I'd get his fist and I'd jam it into my back. So he would push it into my back as I was contracting. And that's honestly, that I don't know if I could have gotten through the contractions if he wasn't doing that. That made all the difference. And anytime he would like move it up an inch or something, like no, down, go down a little bit, push. So he would push through there, and I was sitting on the end of the bed, and about an hour into that first nurse being there, she rotated out. Her, I guess, shift was over. Another nurse came in, and she had I think someone she was training probably with her, and they actually were awesome. I was super glad that the first person left and I got them, and they were funny. So, between contractions, they'd say funny things, and, I'd be, you're laughing through your gritting your teeth kind of thing. And just made the atmosphere enjoyable, even though it was really tense. And kind of as a little bit of a backstory, giving birth had always, probably since middle school, always been something that I was afraid to do. It's like, I want to have kids, but I don't want to go through childbirth, so maybe I'll just adopt. Like, that was kind of my thought until I probably hit my 20s and was like, okay, well, maybe I'll have my own. But yeah, so I had some fear surrounding it, and then my whole pregnancy leading up to it, that was the big thing I wrestled through internally, is believing life. I had some health things outside of pregnancy where I just was afraid that my body couldn't handle it. I wasn't really sure what was going to happen. And my mom would talk to me about, like, speak life over yourself. And, as a believer, it's one of those things, like, I really wrestled to give it to the Lord and to trust Him with just the whole process and how it was going to go. And just to kind of war against some of those fears. So that day when I was in that labor room, the contractions were really intense, and it was definitely like you just get through that one moment. You focus on the one moment and nothing else, and you got that counter pressure there, and you're just getting through it kind of thing, and then you get a little break and you're okay, and you just do it 1 minute at a time. So I remember it being really intense. It definitely hurt, but it wasn't scary for me. I don't remember ever feeling scared at any point. It just was kind of like this, okay, it's go time kind of thing, and you just stay in the moment sort of thing. So my spirits and the way I was feeling emotionally and stuff, I actually was doing pretty well in the middle of all of this. And I think I was afraid that I was going to hurt so much I'm going to pass out or something, I'm going to throw up, different things. But I really didn't have any of that, which I was super thankful for. It just was intense. So as I'm sitting on the edge of the bed, I remember I got up and I tried a couple different positions because I had envisioned, I'm going to go get in the shower. I'm going to have the warmth on my back. I'm going to do these different positions. It's going to help the contractions and the labor along. And honestly, I just ended up on the edge of the bed, bent over with, his fist in my back, or on the floor, going this kind of crouched, like kneeling onto the bed position. And I pretty much just stayed in those two positions for a while. At about, my original birth plan, I wanted to leave some grace for myself to just see how it goes. Like, I had never given birth before. I didn't know what the pain was going to be like. I didn't know how my body was going to handle it. So I wasn't really sure if I wanted pain meds. I did know that I wanted to get as far in as it could. I wanted to get in as far in as I felt like I wanted to do, because I was concerned after reading different things, and I was concerned that if I got an epidural too early, that it would slow things down, that it would increase chances of a cesarean, just in general, that it would increase potential complications. And honestly, probably the part that I was most intimidated was the actual pushing. The contractions, is muscular kind of pain, and you hear about contractions. Then once you're pregnant, you start hearing about things like the ring of fire, like when you're giving birth, and you're like, yeah, it's like the baby starts coming through, it feels like fire kind of thing. So I think I was more nervous about my ability to handle that than the actual contractions. So in my mind, I'm still hanging in there. We're gonna keep going. My husband, who is not, like, he can be kind of a glutton for punishment and pushing his own body physically with sports and things. He is not afraid of blood. He is not, like, his dad was a doctor. He's sutured himself up. He's done all kinds of crazy things. So I didn't expect any of, like, the pain, gore, blood, any of that to bother him. What I hadn't seen before is him seeing me in pain bothered him. So he actually started begging me to get an epidural. So, he's begging me to get an epidural, and I'm telling him, like, I'm still good. I'm still good. I might in a bit, kind of thing. And he's being so sweet. He's like, I hate seeing you in pain. Are you sure you don't want one? So finally at about, I was past 7 centimeters. I knew that much. A good bit past it. I kind of started getting to the point where it's like, okay, like I'm good right now, but we're getting up to the line of I'm not sure how much more I can take. And then we still got the pushing past that. So I think I'm good with getting an epidural now. So at that point, and I knew it was going to take a little while because I knew they had to get the IV fluids in you first. So that by the time you actually get an epidural, you might be looking at just, 30, anywhere from 20 minutes to an hour later, depending on who all he has to see first.
Okay. So you probably were maybe around 8 centimeters when you got the epidural?
So found out later that probably was about 9 centimeters when I got one. By the time it actually was in me and went into effect, I probably was about 9 centimeters. So I was almost done with contracting, which honestly, I was okay with that. Part of me is like, well, I was so close to the finish line, but it wasn't the contractions that I was really trying to avoid it.
So did you have any other medications or anything that you got prior to that epidural where you had to have IV? Or no, it was just the epidural was the medication you were receiving?
It was just the epidural. I hadn't gotten anything else. I'm trying to remember if I had to get an IV just in general, but I don't think I did. I don't think I had to get the IV until I told them I wanted it.
Were you Group B strep positive at all?
No. Yeah, so that makes a big difference because I didn't have to get the IV and the antibiotics and all that. But yeah, so by the time the anesthesiologist is the one who does it, he comes in, and you have to sit on the end of the bed, and the hardest part is they tell you you're gonna have to be still when they actually get ready to do it. You're gonna have to be still, which at the time I was probably 8, 9 along. So sitting still between contractions when you're 8 or 9 along, it's not the easiest thing. So honestly, I was most worried about that. At that point, it was like, yeah, this super hurts, but I'm more worried that I'm going to move when this guy's putting a needle in my back. It actually turned out fine. Just the timing of it, he was pretty quick. He got everything ready back there, with cleaning it and everything like that, and getting it where things needed to go, kind of lined up. I had already had the IV in me at that point. And he waited. He was like, okay, here comes the next one. He let me ride through the next contraction. And then as soon as that one ended, he did it. It really didn't hurt. I could think I've expected that it was, it's going to be like this big needle going in your back. It's going to hurt. It's going to be like worse than a contraction. It probably hurt, but at that point, you've got all these chemicals going on in your body to help you manage pain, and you're in the middle of contracting. So it's kind of like, well, compared to all that, who cares? So that part wasn't too bad. Once he got it in, he was done, and he was kind of out of there. He gives you the initial one, and then what I didn't know kind of how this worked leading it up to it, but they also give it to you in a drip and an IV to kind of keep it going. As I start to feel it, honestly, I have some really high metabolism. I don't weigh a ton. Like I had gained probably 25 to 30 pounds during my pregnancy, and which, keeping on weight is more of an issue for me. So I don't know if he was just trying to make sure he covered his bases, or it's because of my metabolism or whatever, but I definitely felt it. Like it was kind of creeping up in the lower half of my chest. I could feel it up in there. It didn't affect breathing or anything like that, but it was enough that I didn't like it. I didn't like that I could feel it that much. I honestly was at the point where I was like, I'm okay with feeling some pain. Like, can we turn it down? So, I'm okay with feeling some. Let's just take the edge off, kind of thing. But once they give you that initial amount, you have to wait for that initial one to wear off. They can't really adjust that one. The only one they can really adjust is the drip. So I had to wait for that. And I don't even know time that was. I do know that I progressed pretty fast between 5 p.m. till that was probably maybe 2:30. I really don't know exactly. Maybe 2:30. I went to probably about a 9. And then from the point when I got the epidural until my daughter was actually born was probably 11 a.m., 12 p.m. If I did the math, it was 19 hours probably total of labor. So half of it, the first half of it went pretty fast as far as all the contractions. And then I do think things slowed down a lot once I got the epidural, just purely based on timeline. Probably because I was so numb. But at that point, I was so far along that it didn't stall me out or cause complications for me.
Okay, so if you could just touch on for us, like, what pushing was like with that epidural. If you could touch on that for us.
So I had been told that, I would feel like I needed to poop. There would be some kind of sensation and was supposed to get the nurse to get the midwife at that point. But I never felt that. So at some point we were like, well, maybe we should just check and see where things belong. So the midwife comes in and she checks me, and sure enough, like it's go time. Probably was a little bit ago and I just didn't know. So I just remember her, she gets a baseball cap. This is the midwife, and she gets it and she puts it on backwards and she's like, okay, it's baby catching time, let's go, which was just awesome. So she really coached me through because I couldn't really feel anything. I mean, I could, like, my stomach would tense up. I could tell I was having a contraction, but there weren't a whole lot of sensations to go with it. So it was really just effort. Like if you're lifting weights, there's just that effort of like, you just use those muscles. It doesn't hurt, but you're using the muscles still. So she would tell me, she'd be like, push, 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 push. Okay, wait, stop. Stop. And she just would coach me through all of the pushings.
What did she say that helped you know how to push? Because you obviously couldn't feel anything. So what did she say that helped you know how to push?
I think she told me to act like I was pooping. She was like, this area, she described the muscles, and she was like, what it feels like, like when you're tightening up during sex, or like when you're pushing out a bowel movement. She was like, you're going to push like that, but you're going to push harder. You're going to push like really hard, as hard as you can. And I'll tell you how hard to go, and I'll tell you when to ease up. But when I tell you when to go, give it all you got. So she would tell me to push, and she would say things like, okay, ease up, okay, go as hard, go really hard. And, and she would keep saying that for as long as I was supposed to push. And then she would tell me when it was time to stop. So she would ease me through each one. And we just went that way. I think I pushed for about 2 hours probably, just doing that. And we started getting to the point where kiddo was crowning, like, you'd push, and she was born with a good bit of hair. So a little bit of hair would come out. You'd see the hair, and then it'd go back in, and they would laugh because she had this little mohawk basically that it was creating. So you would just see this mohawk coming out and coming in, which is so great. And my husband, of course, was telling me all about it as I'm pushing and wanting to touch it and play with it, because that's just how he is. So at one point we get towards we do this for a couple of hours, and we get to the point where we're starting to get the head out, and now we're starting to get to where the shoulders are. And so she's, at this point, I'm getting tired, but I'm not in pain again because of the epidural. But she's like, you got to go hard. You got to really give it all you got. Don't quit on me, kind of thing. So she would tell me to push really hard, and I would push basically until it's like, this is as much as my muscles can do, and then she'd give me a break. And I remember her saying, I don't remember if she said this beforehand or in the middle of it, but at some point she was like, yeah, what we're going to do is we're going to get you to push super hard, and as soon as we get to a certain point, then I'm going to tell you to pause in the middle of it to avoid tearing. So this was the plan. So the plan was, to push and then pause. Well, I was pushing super, super hard, and then she gave me that cue at some point to, okay, pause. It was not super easy to pause. So we went from pushing, was about to pause, and all of a sudden kiddo's coming out. So Lethe basically flew out, like midwife literally caught her in the air like a fish. Like and I know it sounds terrible, but it's literally what it looked like. It looked like a fish was shooting out. And, quick grab. She was thankfully ready. So much for the whole, like, we're going to ease into the shoulders and stuff. I did end up having a 2nd-degree tear. Thankful it wasn't a 3rd degree. At the time, I didn't feel it because I was numb. Yeah, and then they did the delayed, a little bit of delayed cord clamping. They let you do the skin to skin and encourage breastfeeding really early. As soon as they got, I don't remember if right away if they took her away and they cleaned up and then did the vitamin K and the eye ointments. We postponed getting the Hep B. We didn't want to get it as a newborn. So at some point they took her away and they did all that, but pretty quickly I had her on my chest. I think maybe even right away. Right away I had some time, and then maybe they took her, cut the cord somewhere in there, and then brought her back. Probably was what it was. So we breastfed pretty quick.
I know you said you had a birth plan. Did you feel having a birth plan was effective for you?
I feel like it helped me decide what I wanted, and it helped me ask the questions I needed to know what to expect. I don't know if my practitioners ever looked at it. I didn't bring it up during the actual labor and delivery. Supposedly they had it on file, but I think it just helped me to have those conversations beforehand and to know what I wanted, so that things like not having that monitor where I was strapped to the bed the whole time, knowing that a wireless one was an option, that kind of thing.
So, would you have a birth plan for possible future pregnancies? I don't know if you and your husband are considering, but is that something that you would either recommend or try to use again in the future?
I would recommend it. I would say hold it a little bit loosely, but have it so that you know what you want and so that you're communicating with your practitioner, knowing that it may not totally go that way, but at least you're intentional.
And what do you feel were the benefits of the care providers you had? And would you consider trying alternate care providers possibly in the future? Or like I said, if you all do not plan on having more children, would you recommend a different type of care provider than what you had?
I feel like the benefits of what I had was I had the midwifery more for the mom, and a little bit more of the natural support element, which I really liked. But then if something had gone wrong, I also had an OBGYN that was there on call. I also had a setting where, if we had to do emergency C-section, that was an option. I would consider other things. I would probably lean towards doing the similar thing again, but having maybe one person that I worked with throughout my whole pregnancy, so it was consistent, or, if I was not going to use pain meds again, maybe consider a birth center.
Okay, and then what encourages you to consider giving birth again?
My child. The experience was really hard. Honestly, the pregnancy is the part that, to me, is the most, deterrent's not the great word, but that's the hardest part, because that part lasts 9 months, even though the actual birth is obviously more intense. But my child's worth it. It's worth going through all of that stuff just to get another kiddo like that. And then again, there was grace for the process, and the pain was hard, but it wasn't impossible.
So, Caitlin, is there anything you would like to share with us that you do professionally or outside business?
Yeah, I have my own business. I'm a dog trainer. Mostly, now that I'm a mom, I write about dog training as a freelance writer, and you can find me on www.lifedogtraining.com, and I'm on Upwork, a couple different freelance websites.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Loved having you today.
Thank you.